talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, once again joined by Mitch Stormer. Mitch, we're back. It's been a while. We haven't been on the Zoom call in a while, but we're back. How the heck are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. I was, getting settled in my hibernation mode and off-season mode. And sure enough, we get some breaking news here that really kind of is exciting, and it's worthy of an episode here with you.
Absolutely. So, truth be told, all things being laid out here, we had planned to record on Sunday night, and then we pushed it back a day because I had craziness in my house. We pushed it back to Monday, and then lo and behold, Monday afternoon, we start seeing on Twitter that the IHSA board approves to go 1 through 32 playoff seeding. And man, Mitch, it's breaking news. Here we go. We got to record. So this is really exciting news. And also we have other news and notes. We have a great interview from Lena-Winslow's head coach, Ric Arand, coming up later in the show. Mitch, this is a jam-packed episode.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that it's Super Bowl weekend, and that means it is officially the View from the West 1-year anniversary. Did you even know that?
I didn't know that. So yeah, this is quite the episode. So that's cool.
That's right. We've been through 2 seasons, technically. The spring, obviously made things a little funny. We've been through 2 seasons, but this is our 1-year anniversary. So we have a huge show. Thank you so much to everyone who listens, who downloads, subscribes, does all the things. View from West Pod on Twitter, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Give us an email. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear on the show. But we have a lot of fun. But we got to start, Mitch, with the breaking news. Like we said off the top, the IHSA board has approved 1 through 32 playoff seeding in Class 1A through Class 6A. So that joins 7 and 8A in the straight seeded playoff bracket. That'll be the first time we get this in the IHSA since 2001. So this is really exciting.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Obviously, with a couple schools that we cover, Moline being the most notable, having been in 7A this past season, we saw this type of seeding, right? But for the most of the schools in our area, they've been through that traditional North and South bracket. But I think this change is going to be welcomed. I think that it's going to lead to a better understanding, or it'll just give a better, I think, idea of who the true state champion is. You've seen the North bracket dominate for so long. And again, nothing against teams that come from the South, because now that it's going to be more of a mixture. But what helps, I think, is that you might see teams from the North go further into the playoff bracket. You're not going to see so many good teams maybe lose in the first and second round against the eventual state champion. Maybe those matchups come in the quarters, the semis. Greg, you could have an all-conference state championship now with this setup.
Yeah, and I think that's what's been discussed for years, is like, we start with the NUIC. That's, kind of where I think our head goes immediately. For anyone in this northern half of the state, I think, especially in the smaller classes, that's where you have to look. The NUIC has had matchups between, Forreston and Lena-Winslow are the big teams that stand out. Those 2 teams met in the semifinals in 17 and 18, with the winner going on to win a state championship in those matchups. They also met up in the quarterfinals in 2016, and Forreston went on to win that one. So it's like year in and year out, you've seen the trend. Like, these teams are meeting up. And sure, those are late round. I mean, the semifinals. But really, when you get that far in, you start thinking this should be the state championship game based on results of the actual state title game that happened in that year.
Right. And again, certainly this could happen with any conference, but just talking specifically about the NUIC, I did see one comment that said that this is now 1A is now the NUIC Invitational, because you could see, let's say 5 or 6 teams from that conference make a serious run into the playoffs. You could have the final 8 teams be 5 from one conference. So yeah, this is exciting. Like I said, I think it's going to give a better understanding and give more teams the chance to prove that they belong that deep into a playoff run, because we've seen so many teams just, have tough matchups in round one, tough matchups in round two, where now they have a chance to make a deep run, I think.
Yeah, well, you talk about it. Interesting. You bring up the phrase like a chance to prove themselves. I go back to one of the all-time great state title games in terms of our area of coverage, 1998, Aledo versus Rock Ridge. Two Olympic Conference rivals at the time. If Jim Taylor from WRMJ is listening, hashtag bring back the Olympic. He's all over it. He wants this. Two Olympic Conference rivals. Rock Ridge wins the regular season matchup. Get this, Mitch. In week 8, Rock Ridge beats Aledo 49-0.
Woo.
They both go on to march through the playoffs. They meet up in Bloomington at the time, Illinois State. Aledo comes away with the state championship win 25-16.
Mm-hmm.
A matchup like that has been impossible for the last 20 years. Like, this is really exciting. I mean, working back in my time working at KWQC with Dan Pearson and Nick Bull. Nick Bull was an Aledo graduate. Dan Pearson had been around for years covering Aledo. Both of them, I always talked about this year and that run because it was so special and so unique. And it was kind of taken away when they went to 1 through 16. So it's great. I am so excited for the possibility of that type of thing happening for our area.
Right. And, you see it in college, right? You see it in basketball. March Madness is structured a lot differently, but you can see teams from conferences competing in the Final Four in the championship. And certainly in the college football playoff, we just saw it. And we've seen it a couple of times where two teams from the SEC are going up against each other. So, the only downside I could see is going to be a travel factor. I was making the joke earlier with a friend of mine from Lena where, this is all good, but until, a team from way up north like Lena would potentially have to go all the way south to Carbondale for a quarterfinal game or something like that. So those situations are going to come up. And I don't know how big of an issue that'll be logistically, but again, if that's the only thing that keeps the IHSA or keep this sort of seeding from really determining, or I should say a better way of determining a state champion, I think that all schools will take that kind of trade-off in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think that over the years, I understood the travel concern, but I think that it's been so long now that it got to a point where so many people have seen these what ifs scenarios that we've brought up that I think everybody around the state thought, okay, like if we can do something about it, and you can, you can make it this way. And then I think that, yeah, let's try it. Let's see how it works. And then I think in a few years, I don't know, maybe you will have schools that cite travel concerns, but I really feel like in the spirit of the competitive balance and the competition, I think that most schools, most athletic directors will say, yep, we can build it into our budget. We want to make this happen.
I wonder though, Greg, too, if this maybe brings back the state championships to Champaign, a more centrally located game. Like you said, Bloomington is a fine facility too, but I'm wondering if maybe they're making this switch that maybe that trade-off would be, okay, well, the championship's not going to be so far north. That way our southern teams aren't always feeling like they have to travel. Maybe it gets it more of a centrally located title game. I don't know why it ever switched from Champaign anyway. I don't think I've heard nothing but great things from DeKalb. But I wonder if maybe now they'll have to maybe consider having a more central state championship location.
I think like all things, it comes back to logistics. I think originally Illinois State had to give up the state title game because they made a playoff run in the FCS playoffs one year. And so they had to give it up. And then I think that when the Big Ten expanded their schedule, that every other year, Illinois is playing a home game on that weekend. Okay. So I think that became the logistics issue of Illinois was having to use their facility. I could see at some point going to 4A through 8A, play in DeKalb, because most of the teams, when you get towards 6, 7, 8, are going to be up in that area of the state. And then the smaller schools, 1 through 3, 1 through 4. Sorry, I should say 5 through 8 would go north, and then 1 through 4 would go south. I could see something like that happening. Now, me personally, I've always liked the experience in DeKalb. I've gone multiple times. Every time I've gone, it's been great. Champaign's been fine as well. I don't have any issue with either location. To me, DeKalb being a slightly smaller stadium, I think helps it feel like it's a little more packed. It feels like the crowd's a little more into it, or because it's louder.
Well, the stands are really you know, right there.
Whereas Illinois sometimes feels a bit cavernous. And so I've always liked DeKalb for that aspect. But yeah, I think I can see that either way.
Again, that's complete speculation, just kind of thinking off the top of my head. But I would imagine there's going to be another domino to fall from this. I just don't know if that's what it's going to be, or maybe they just, you know, they keep the status quo. I have no idea if they have a contract with Northern Illinois or DeKalb or anything like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just really excited because I think it's a great move in terms of the fact that I think over the years, the results have dictated the North has won more often than not. Not every year. It's not flawless. I know Stark County went down a couple years ago, and I really felt good about Stark County winning a state championship, and Arcola beat them in DeKalb. But for the most part, the northern half of the bracket has won the state championship. So I feel like this is a way to kind of hopefully spread out that talent a little bit, and we get a true state champion. And it's just one of those things that it's been discussed for so long. And then all of a sudden today it was like, that's happening. Like,
I didn't even, you know, I don't follow the IHSA board and what they do, but I didn't even know this was on the table. So, you know, when you said that to me, it was like, not even like a rumor that they're going to talk about it. Like, they voted on it. It's good to go. So, a welcome change and exciting for the future for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Mitch, we have other exciting updates in 8-man football.
Yeah, this is where I think that the IHSA listens to our show, because we're finally getting traction on this. So give us the second update here.
That's right. So in the same board meeting, the IHSA also discussed 8-man football becoming an IHSA sanctioned playoff sport as soon as 2023, which is what we've called for this year. I see no reason outside of participation numbers, like outside of the number of total teams. I didn't see any reason why it shouldn't be, but for better or worse, I know some people don't love the fact that, you know, football enrollments are shrinking, but it's growing. 8-man is growing. And so the IHSA board said there was still a lot of things to discuss, you know, things including the playoff qualifier numbers, how many teams get in, the number of classes that you have in 8-man. At this point, I don't think you need multiple classes. You're not there yet. But they talked about a playoff schedule and then obviously school enrollment limitations. You'd have to set a limit on how big your school can be when you're allowed to play 8-man football, which they already do that. The controlling board that runs 8-man football currently in Illinois already has a limit. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I know they do. And I'll give credit to the organizers of the 8-man football division currently as it sits. They've done a great job. And I think what is going to really go a long way in the IHSA board approving this is the fact that this 8-man division has been organized. It's been well run. You know, I think that's going to go a long way in the IHSA board approving this.
Yeah. You know, this isn't something where they're just approving 8-man football from the jump with no 8-man teams, you know, to go off of. This has been an established, you know, 3 seasons now they've had I believe so. Tournament. So they're, you know, the foundation is there. It's absolutely there. So I'm hoping this is a, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire sort of situation. They're talking about it. It's on their radar. And hopefully, you know, this gives them a year to kind of pay attention to it maybe a little bit more, see how it runs. And I think it'd be a pretty seamless, you know, introduction into making it a sanctioned sport. And like you said, kudos to everyone who's been on that organization for a couple of years now, getting this going. And, you know, I hope their hard work is recognized. And I think 8-man is going to continue to grow, and that there'll be a lot of teams like there are in all the classes now as we move forward. So this is good, and I hope it comes true.
Yeah, I think, going back to, we were pretty outspoken throughout this year that, why isn't this noted by the IHSA? Why isn't this sanctioned? But right. I will say, in all seriousness, I think the IHSA has done the right thing in letting it play out for a couple years to kind of see if the numbers continue to grow, and also just to see if it works, basically.
Yeah.
And that goes back to my point that the people who organize it now have proven that it does work. There's a lot of community support throughout the playoff system and in their state championship game in Monmouth, which has been a huge success. I mean, it's been great. So I think for as much as we were, let's do something right now, I think it's good that the IHSA, has looked at it.
Yeah. And we're going to get to it in just a minute. But, there's going to be a team that was 11-man going down to 8-man, and that's just one in our area. So it's not to say that there's not 4 or 5 in the state in the same predicament. So yeah, I think that this will continue to grow. And like I said, I hope this comes to fruition and it becomes a state recognized event.
Well, that, Mitch, is called a tease ahead, because we do
That's
have
tease ahead. That keeps the listeners engaged, Greg. That keeps the listeners and these listen numbers up. So yeah, we gotta keep it flat and just let them listen.
That's right. That's podcasting 101, Mitch. Is that the class we took in college? I don't know.
Sure is. Yeah.
So, all right, Mitch. Well, with that flawless segue, let's get into our other news and notes. Here's all the things that we thought we were going to talk about right away.
This was the show up until about 4:00.
Exactly. And then we had, everything blow up, which is great. We got a ton of things to talk about here.
Yep.
So anyway, I think the big news up until we got this most recent news, Brandon Kretzmer has left Sterling Newman. He's taken a job. He's joined the staff at his alma mater, Western Illinois University.
Yep.
So huge credit to Coach Kretzmer getting into the college ranks. He's proven himself as a great head coach, as a great football coach. Yep. I'm happy for him, but I'm sad to see him leave Newman, because he was doing great things, and personally dealing with him in the podcast and interviewing him. He was on the show a year ago. Really good guy. I wish him the best, but it's a loss for Sterling Newman for sure.
Yeah. And, he was really a perfect candidate to fill the shoes of Mike Poposi. And, he spent 3 years at Newman, went 23-6 and won a title. So what more can you ask for? But as you mentioned, he played linebacker at Western Illinois. Now he has a chance to coach the position at his alma mater. Who would pass that up? So congrats to him. And it's a big name program now that needs a head coach.
Yeah. But one thing I think is interesting, and, this is huge credit to Coach Kretzmer and to that program and to that team, because obviously he had to fill the shoes of Mike Poposi, which is, you look at it at face value, that seems impossible.
Right.
And he goes out and he wins the state championship in 2019. So don't you think that in some way, he kind of got the hardest part out of the way, he bridged that gap to the coach that takes over now, to where they got that state title. They kept the program up at a high level. And sure, the next coach has that pressure to be Sterling Newman, to be the Blue Machine, but a little bit of that pressure is taken off, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the blueprint at Newman has been the same for
literally, Mitch, the blueprint.
Right. Yeah. The Blue Machine blueprint.
I wanted to get that joke in there. I couldn't let it go.
You nailed it. It's a culture thing. So it's not to say that any coach is going to come in there and be successful, because that's not true. And that's that's a disservice to Coach Kretzmer. But they do such a good job in that community, in that youth program. The kids are going to be ready to play. They were injury plagued this year, still made it to the playoffs, and got to the second round. They beat Mercer County, got to the second round. So, they're going to be fine. That program's going to be just fine, but it's just interesting to see, or to wait and hear who they replace. They've had the thing about Newman, this was even true in my years at Morrison, is that they seem to have consistency in their coaching staff. There's not a lot of turnover there. So even though we're talking about a coach leaving, there's a lot of assistants that have been there a long time. So you wonder if one of those guys is going to get the promotion to the head job. there's grads of Newman that are coaches on other staffs. Not going to mention any names, not going to speculate about anything, but there's certainly some interesting names here, and that get the keys to the Cadillac with a program like Newman.
Yeah, well, you nailed it. I mean, with the consistency of coaches over the years, and the program has been run so well by Mike Poposi leading the way, but then also with the coaches he had under him. And I think one of those coaches we have to point out, big congratulations to Tim Nelson, longtime Newman assistant coach, will be inducted into the Illinois Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame class of 2022. So Mitch, you look through Tim Nelson's resume as an assistant coach. He was the defensive coordinator for a long time for Sterling Newman. He had 307 wins with the program, 28 playoff appearances, 6 state titles, and 2 runner-ups.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's what you're talking about. I mean, huge congrats to him on the Hall of Fame nomination. That's well earned among a program that was so well run, and he was a big part of why.
Yeah. Again, like we talked about, just the consistency and the continuity that program has had. And Coach Nelson was a big part of that. Like you said, he was a part of all 6 titles and even part of the 2 runner-ups. So you're talking about 8 trips to Champaign and DeKalb. That's a pretty solid resume and a well-deserved Hall of Fame induction, I should say, here for Coach.
Mitch, as a defensive coordinator, Tim Nelson was probably breaking down film of QB1 Mitch Stormer in Morrison circa 2005, 2004.
Yeah, well, it worked in 2004 because I think we lost 40-0 that year. So that's a true story. That's an absolute true story. And I think, we lost our senior year too. So he had our number for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Congratulations again to Tim Nelson. Actually, he announced that this past season was his final season as a coach. He's stepping away from coaching because of work commitments with his job. But man, what a career, what a run at Newman, and really a lot to look back on and a lot to be proud of with him, Coach Poposi, and then, that segue to Brandon Kretzmer. And I think Newman's in fine hands. I think that they'll find a great hire, and I'm sure that they'll do great. So, Mitch, we have more coaching carousel, more coaching news here
in the track. Yeah,
that's right. Spring Valley Hall rehires Randy Tiemann to replace Nick Greeny. So Tiemann is back after a 2-year absence to lead Spring Valley Hall. In his first run, he was 45-39. He had an 8-year stint as head coach, and they went 6-0 and won the track Mississippi in 2017. So this is a program, a proud Spring Valley Hall program. Mm-hmm. And in recent years, they had been really good. So, Randy Tiemann is back. I read an article about how he, missed it a little bit this last fall when things got back up and rolling and looked, normal again in the fall. So, good to have him back on the sideline.
Yeah. And like we just talked about with Newman, that gives Hall a little bit more consistency, a little bit more continuity and bringing things back. Not all those players are going to remember Coach Tiemann or were a member of when he was around, but, this was a team that struggled this past season, but were involved real close in a bunch of games. And I think they bring a lot of kids back. So this could turn out to be a really good hire here for Hall. And I think that is a little bit of a sleeping beast there, because they're just a couple years away from winning the Track Mississippi division when they went 6-0. And I think there are tools there that could get them up to that level again.
More coaching changes will go to the NUIC. Dakota Indians have hired Dan Sheets. Sheets is a Stillman Valley graduate. He won a state championship as a player in 2003. He's been a defensive coordinator in Dakota for the past 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. And talking a little bit to Kyle Kampmeyer, I think this is a really good hire because he's obviously been around, like I said, defensive coordinator, but I think he's already involved in the school, has the attention of the kids, and hopefully can get that energy and that excitement to translate onto the football field and get kids involved and really get things moving in Dakota.
Yeah. And I guess we're 3 for 3 here and sound like a broken record where we talk about consistency, but again, this is a coach with a nice background, both as you mentioned, a Stillman Valley grad with a championship under his belt. and been with the Dakota program, a very proud program there for the past couple of years. So the way Kyle was talking about it, it seems like there's a lot of excitement in the community. Obviously, they've had a down year, maybe a down couple years. But again, a sleeping giant, especially in that conference where they can make some noise. So, excited for Coach Sheets. I'm sorry. And to get that program back to, that powerhouse that everyone knows Dakota to be. And excited to see it. It seems like if he gets Dakota to that level, the entire season of the NUIC football will be much watch games. Yeah. And with this new playoff seeding, we get even more teams from that conference in and well-deserving.
Well, and I'll tease ahead a little bit to the interview we have with Coach Arand from Lena-Winslow coming up later. He says in his interview, and I agree with him, that every year he wants to hear that every team looks good. They're going to be good and they're going to compete. Because he says that makes the whole conference better. If we go in and play the best 8 teams or 9 teams every year from our conference, that's better for us in the long run. He doesn't want to hear, that this team has a down year. This team, is pretty injury plagued. They're not doing very well, because that doesn't help them necessarily in the long run. Sure, they'll grab that win, but you want to play the best week in and week out. And that's what the NUIC has done. Now, on the opposite side of that coin, I will say, Dan Sheets replaces Joe Free, who resigned at the end of this past year. Free compiled a record of 28-25, technically had a winning record. He led Dakota to the quarterfinals in 2018, but it hasn't really gone well in the last couple years. The spring, they were winless. They were 2-7 this past season. So I think even if he finishes above 500, I think that with a program like Dakota, the expectations are so high year in and year out. So that's the opposite side of the coin. For we talk about how good the NUIC is, but there is that pressure. There is that expectation. So I think that, Dan Sheets coming in recognizes that. I'm sure. Yeah. Sure he sees it. And it starts with getting numbers, getting kids involved, and you got to win a few games, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Since Sheets is involved with the school and is, I believe he's a teacher there. He's got familiarity with these coaches, with these players. And so if there was a numbers problem in previous years, and look, we can't take too much, COVID and so many things that affect a lot of smaller community programs that we saw more than at Dakota.
Yep.
But if you get a guy like Coach Sheets in there who is familiar with his students and has been with them for a couple of years off the field, and maybe he starts getting a few more players out, little by little. That's a few more players that go into the weight room. It's a few more players, a few more bodies on the sidelines. You start to build that back up to the way that Dakota is used to. And so, looking forward to it. I like the hire here, and it's exciting to see Dakota kind of rise back up into that upper echelon of the NUIC.
Well, Mitch, we're going to stay in the NUIC, kind of. East Dubuque has voted to join Southwestern High School in Hazel Green, Wisconsin, in an 11-man football co-op. The IHSA doesn't allow co-ops to cross state borders, so that takes East Dubuque out of the NUIC, and that puts them in competing in a regular season schedule in the Six Rivers Conference in the Wisconsin, in the WIAA, the Wisconsin, State Athletic Association.
Yeah, interscholastic.
I was trying to come up with a name, but it's WIAA. So because of Wisconsin rules, Southwestern would host all postseason games. But that also being said, there's a chance that they could face a 2-year postseason ban. And I read some articles. I'm not really sure why, but I think the Wisconsin board goes on 2-year agreements. So basically 2-year eligibility each year based on your enrollment. So I'm guessing that because Southwestern has changed their co-op or their agreement, then that becomes in violation of their contract in 2 years.
Right.
So it's a little messy. I don't know exactly, but either way, for our purposes, East Dubuque is out of the NUIC, which is a little disappointing because that was a great rivalry with Galena. I hope they can continue that as a non-conference rivalry with this co-op they're forming. But, it's sad to see them leave the NUIC.
Yeah. They were making strides, I thought, in the fall. I thought they had a really good season. And I think this will work out well for them. Truthfully, we've seen it with other teams from the NUIC that did that. I believe it was River Ridge, who now co-ops with the Wisconsin team. I think they won a state title. So
I believe they did. Yep.
I think Southwestern, I don't know what Southwestern has at the moment, but I think they are, if this goes through, inheriting a very good East Dubuque program, and postseason ban, or if they appeal that, or even if that goes through, I think that could be a really, really good team in that conference. So, again, we're sad to see them leave, but circumstances are what they are, and I think it'll work out for them in this co-op situation.
Yeah, looking back at last year, I think they had a lot of talent that unfortunately was injury plagued, and I don't think they were ever all really healthy at the same time.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate, because I think they had a lot of individuals who looked really good throughout the year, and I saw some, when I covered them in a few games, and I think they just weren't ever really able to put it all together on the field at the same time. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think it's a program that's, well grounded. They have a good foundation. I think that it's a good place for them to join a co-op. I wish it could happen in Illinois. But the closest one would be Galena, and Galena seems like they're in fine footing on their own. They don't need it right now. So who knows, in the ever changing landscape that we've seen that is high school football, things could change in 2 years, in 4 years, who knows? So,
well, yeah. And as we talk about, a school leaving and changes, insert West Carroll.
Yep. Yeah. That leads me to my next point. West Carroll is now back to 11-man varsity schedule. Last season, they played a JV only schedule because they didn't have enough numbers in the junior and senior level. So now they're back with East Dubuque being out. The NUIC now still sits at 9 teams. So similar to last year, each team is going to have to play one non-conference game, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. But I get it. I'm not an athletic director, so I don't have to fill that 1 week. And it gets tricky. When you start talking about a week 5, 6 matchup, most teams are playing a conference game. So it gets a little tricky.
Yeah. And, this past year, we saw that with, Dupec having to play St. Teresa. We saw Lee-Win play. I don't remember what
Chicago,
that school was.
DePaul or
something like that. Yeah. So and I think Dupec was supposed to play normal.
Urbana.
Urbana. Urbana. That's what it was.
Yep.
So yeah. Hopefully with this open week, so to speak, out of conference week, you wonder, are you going to go a Dupec route and try and schedule a solid team like St. Teresa was? So yeah, but again, like you said, there's not going to be much changing in the NUIC in terms of structure. So that's ultimately what's important. And it's good to have West Carroll back. It's be fun to see the Thunder on the sidelines again, and a welcome. If you're going to lose East Dubuque, at least you're bringing in West Carroll. So that'll be good to see. Nice change of pace.
So West Carroll is going back to 11-man, but we have news in the Lincoln Trail Conference that the Ridgewood Spartans are going to 8-man football. The Cambridge and Alwood schools both voted to go to 8-man. So Mitch, again, the changing landscape, it happens again to the Lincoln Trail.
Right. Where they just brought in Knoxville and A-Town this past season. Now they have another opening. Will they fill that? It's hard to say at this point. But yeah, another school that, succumbs to circumstances, unfortunate circumstances, but again, have that option to play 8-man, and that's why having that is important. So yeah, the Lincoln Trail will, Ridgewood, a program that was in the playoffs not too long ago, and they were pretty consistent, had a couple down years, and now you see why, maybe because of numbers. So this is going to be a hole to fill for that conference for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you look back going back 10 or 15 years ago, Cambridge Vikings on their own were a very good football team and made it to the state championship game and finished as a runner-up. You look at Alwood, who at one time was paired with Rova. The Alwood Rova school co-op went to the playoffs several times. They were a very good football team. And then when they combined to become Ridgewood, I think Ridgewood is one of the teams that kind of got robbed by the loss of the 2020 season. They got to play in 2021, but they had they were a playoff team in 19. And then in 20, I felt like that was the year. They had that collection of juniors and some experienced seniors. I felt like they were right there, and they, I believe, pulled off a big upset over Anawan Wethersfield that year. And it just felt like they were right on the verge of being really good. They lost on a last-second play to Mercer County.
Like we said, it's a traditionally really good program.
Yep.
Had a down season, and now with numbers are going to have to go a different route. But like we said, it's hard to know right now what the LTC is going to do. But big shoes to fill in terms of bringing a good contender into that conference.
Yes, the LTC lost West Central a few years ago, who's done really well in the 8-man ranks. And now they're losing Ridgewood as well. Well, speaking of 8-man football, we have an 8-man update. We have now, I believe, 30 teams playing 8-man football. So there's going to be 5 divisions, 2 North divisions, 2 Central divisions, and 1 South division. So if you can follow along, here we go. One of the North divisions will start, which becomes like the NUIC division, basically. Polo, Aquin, Orangeville, Milledgeville, Amboy, and River Ridge. Kyle Kampmeyer is salivating at this right now.
Oh, yeah. Who wouldn't be?
He loves this division here. But they're gonna beat themselves. So it becomes interesting. Right. They're going to take out a lot of, they're going to eliminate a lot of wins by beating themselves. But I think that's the best you could do is play the best and then get to the playoffs.
Right. And that's where 8-man has the seeds 1 through 16, where you're going to see if a team from the NUIC has a 6-3 record and maybe has a lower seed, they'll just work their way down the line into the quarterfinals. So, that's why that seeding works.
So let's look into there's other NUIC teams that'll be in the other Northern Division: Alden Hebron, South Beloit, AFC, Kirkwood Hiawatha, Rockford Christian Life, Elgin Harvest Christian, Yorkville Parkview, and then I believe it's Yorkville Christian Academy. So those are the teams in the other North Division.
Okay.
Central Division is Milford, St. Thomas More, Flanagan, Cornell Woodland, Danville Schlarman, Low Point Washburn, and Blue Ridge. Central Division number 2, Biggsville West Central, the Heat, which we talked about. Ridgewood, Galva, West Prairie, Prairie Heights, and Bushnell Prairie City. And then in the South Division, Pawnee, Decatur Lutheran, Martinsville, Metro East Lutheran, and South Fork. So that is your divisions. They will still keep the same playoffs, 16 teams seeded 1 through 16. So it's interesting because you look at Polo, Aquin, Orangeville, Milledgeville, Amboy, River Ridge. Not all those teams can make the playoffs because somebody's going to finish with a losing record.
Right.
For more than likely.
Right.
So
and again, that's probably something too that the IHSA is looking at in terms of numbers, in terms of what that playoff structure is going to look like. If they get more than they're at 30 now, if say in a year or two they're over 40, maybe they do adopt a 1 through 32, or maybe they adopt some sort of, first couple teams get a bye, something like that. So I think this is a good example of that, of what maybe the IHSA is trying to figure out how it would work so that all the best teams still make the playoffs.
Yep. Either way, it's exciting. I know that as more teams become 8-man teams, that means that football enrollments are dropping. And I know that's a little concerning in general, that either schools are getting smaller or player participation is dwindling. I know either way it's concerning, but I will say, looking at the 8-man ranks, it's good to see some of these teams who really needed it. They needed another option. They didn't have a whole lot of other options when it came to 11-man football. They couldn't co-op anymore, so this is exciting. So and
we've said it before, if you've never seen 8-man, it's a lot of fun. There are going to be instances where you couldn't even tell the difference if you're, watching 8-man or 11-man. So it's not, some sort of funky arena league rule type of thing. It's still straight up football, just with 3 less people. This is such a much better option than fold or in some instances where a co-op would be not as beneficial. So I'm looking forward to this, to more teams. Like you said, the circumstances are what they are, but having more 8-man teams brings in more excitement into that division.
Mitch, until they build the hockey boards around Milledgeville's football field, it still looks like, Milledgeville football to me. So I'll take it.
Right. Yep.
All right, Mitch. Well, that wraps up the first half of this episode, which was supposed to go about 20 minutes. I think we've covered about everything here.
Yeah. The Lena-Winslow fans are wondering when we're going to get to the point. So we appreciate you listening to us, because we, like you said, we didn't anticipate having the IHSA news. But I think that warrants a bit of a discussion here.
Absolutely. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for joining me for all this discussion. Let's jump right in. Let's hear from Lena-Winslow Panthers head coach Ric Arand. Well, it's Super Bowl weekend, and when we're talking championships, we have to bring on the state champion head coach of the Lena-Winslow Panthers, head coach Ric Arand. Coach, thanks so much for being on View from the West podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Haven't done a lot of this, so we'll see how this rolls. But thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you were a little worried, I think, about the questions going in, but I assure you, there's no math, there's no science. That's not my thing. So I'll stick to football. I think you'll be comfortable with that.
Good deal. That sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Coach, before we jump into fall 2021, which was obviously a great season, another banner year for you guys, let's go back in time a little bit. You're state champs in 2019. 2020 is canceled. You get to the spring of 2021, and it's a shortened, condensed season, but you're already going into the year. I think you knew that Jennings Dunker was out. Now an impact player for you from the state title the year before. He's now at the University of Iowa. So you're already without him. You get this huge matchup in week 1 against Princeton. Mari Roby looks electric in the first quarter. Then he goes down with what at the time appeared to be a bad leg injury. It did turn out to be that way, unfortunately. So now I understand. I think, did you guys go 5-1 in the spring though?
4-1. We ended up having a game canceled. Dakota had COVID or something. I can't remember.
Sure. So the Princeton game.
4-1.
Yeah, the only game you lost was that Princeton game.
Yes.
But either way, take me back to that night leaving Princeton, knowing that this season already is kind of a weird year anyway, because there's no playoffs. You're without your impact senior. Now you're without Mari Roby, potentially looking into the fall when things go for real. What were you and your coaches and your players talking about that night? That had to be kind of tough.
Well, even going back a little further than that, the whole season was tough. It like you said, it was an odd season. You try to make the most of it. I think the kids responded well to the COVID shortened spring season. Me as a coach, I didn't so much. And in talking with my assistant coaches, at one point in time, I'm like, hey, I'm just kind of not feeling it. Are you guys, and they're like, yeah, it just doesn't seem right. The weather was horrible to practice in. Everything just did not feel like football season, except when you're actually on the field. So going down to Princeton, we really had big expectations coming into that year. We had Jennings Dunker coming back. We didn't know till really right before the season started that he was definitely going to be out for the year. We were hoping at some point we could get him back, but it was definitely in his best interest. We go down to Princeton. Princeton had a great team. They were probably well on their way to competing for a 3A state championship. That was one of the better teams we've played over the years. But, a kid like Mari, when Mari's healthy, he can keep you in any game. We were really young up front. We were really young outside of Mari and Luke Benson, to be honest with you, at quarterback. Those couple guys coming back from the state championship team. And, Mari I think he had, a handful of carries for 70 some yards or something in the first quarter and a great touchdown run. And then he went down right on our sideline. And we knew right away it was serious. Dr. Lyles, one of our team doctors, was there. And I think it was even more serious than he thought at the time. But so that, that put a damper on things. But I tell you what, our kids really responded well and played hard. And I think that game right there not only set the tone for the rest of the year, but we played so many young kids in that game that I think it set the tone for this past 2021 season as well. And just because we came out and we battled, I mean, we could have laid down and Princeton could have put a running clock on us real easy because they definitely had us. They had us outmanned. They had us out talented. They had us out everything, And but our kids battled hard, and really, I think, like I said, it set the tone for the rest of the season. We beat some really good teams down the stretch. A really good Galena team, a really good UPEC team. Again, a game there that we probably shouldn't have even been in, and we stayed in it and battled. And then I think that really led to our success this past season because of the depth that we developed.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. On the positive side, looking ahead then, once you get through that spring, what did you see in the summer, in those workouts leading into that fall? It was it was a short off season, but what did you see from having real game experience in that spring with some of those younger players?
Yeah. We gained a lot of experience, and I think we actually ended up having more starters returning for 2021 than it's even possible to put on the field, because I think we had, for example, on offense, I think we had more than 11 possible starters returning just because, Mari was a starter at one point in time. He went down. Jake Zeal stepped in and played for him on offense and defense. Jake goes down with a broken collarbone at East Dubuque. So then we bring in another young kid to start. Zach White started at corner, brought in another young kid to start at running back. And so we ended up getting, out of Mari going down, we ended up getting 3 starters, on either side of the ball out of that one injury. Ethan Fye really came into his own. He was our leading rusher in the spring. He was our leading rusher up until about the end of the regular season this year, while Mari was kind of still nursing that injury and getting healthy. Those guys really stepped up big for us. And, I think the depth that we developed over time and all the experience of all those young kids playing really, really helped us.
Yeah, I want to take a quick side note. Talk about Ethan Fye. That's a kid that, really did the work for you in the spring. And then in the fall, like you talked about, when Mari was still kind of coming back, he really led the way for you guys rushing the ball. I mean, did statistically lead the way rushing the ball. And then come playoff time, I think Mari was 100%, and he really showed everybody in the state, what he could do. And so you weren't seeing Ethan's name so much in the headlines, in the stats, but just give a little shout out to him because he really did a lot of the work for a long time when you needed him to.
Yeah, he did. And he did it on both sides of the ball. He did it in the backfield for us. He did it at outside linebacker for us for 2 years. Just an absolute great kid, great work ethic. He's going to go in. He's going to become a Marine, but he's on a full ride to, I think, probably U of I before that with a big scholarship from the Marines. So that kind of explains his work ethic, his intelligence and things like that. But I give hats off to him because he really came into his own, and we needed him to in the spring season. We had no choice. I mean, we had nobody left when Mari went down, and then a few weeks later in East Dubuque, Jake Zeal went down. Ethan was our guy, and he accepted that role, and he got punished. I mean, everybody knew it was going to him. We didn't have anybody else really to give it to, and he accepted that role. And then this past off season, when Mari was rehabbing, Mari really was. He didn't get the go. I think the clearance from the doctors till late July, and so he had been in our summer workouts all summer. We work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings at 6 a.m. And then he would come in on Tuesday and Thursday mornings just to do some recovery and some rehab on his injured leg. And Ethan was with him the whole time. Ethan would come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays with him. So they got a great relationship, great friendship. But more importantly, they were there for each other together. And then this year, again, you could tell Mari was not at full strength all season long, really, of the regular season. And in addition to that, him being back on the field, he really became a marked man. People didn't care that he wasn't necessarily healthy. They just knew what he could do with the ball in his hands. And so as people really game planned for Mari, that allowed for Ethan to really take over. And, he was basically a 1,000-yard rusher right around there in the regular season. And then, of course, Mari hit stride in the playoffs, and we got a little bit better up front, and, things just took off.
Yeah, we'll get there in a second. Things took off pretty well there come playoff time. You cruise through the regular season, the early part of the regular season. You drop a tight game to Dupec, but I think the game that really kind of turned heads for our area, for maybe around the state, was the Week 9 game against Forreston. Forreston came in and knocked you off, and I think that, they had a good season, but I think it surprised everybody because you guys were the favorites, going into Class 1A at that point. And maybe even after that loss, you were still the favorite. But take me to that night. And, what was the tone in the locker room? What was the talk? Because this is Week 9. The playoffs are a week away, and you never want to lose a football game, but especially at that point in the season.
Yeah. We talk every week, every day at practice about getting better, about being, and I know it's an old cliche, be better, today than you were yesterday, and be better this Friday night than you were last Friday night. And, we talk about those things all the time, and maybe we talk about it too much, but, there were different parts of the season. I thought early on during the season, we were really good. We were getting better. And, then I think, we run into Dupec, and number one, Dupec was really good. So I don't want to take anything away from them, but, in a close ball game, I think we couldn't have played any worse. And again, a lot of it was them on the other side of the ball, doing what they did to us. But, close game where we felt we didn't play very well. We didn't play very well in the ensuing weeks to come. And so going into Forreston, I had been down to see Forreston on a Saturday against East Dubuque. They just looked kind of okay. And I think, at that point in time when we played them on that Week 9 Friday night, I think that game against us meant everything to them. And we weren't playing very well. And we kind of laid an egg. And again, hats off to them. Probably being on the wrong side of it, probably the greatest drive I've ever been involved in. And that last drive, I think they went 91 yards in however many minutes. And that was just like a knife slowly going into you. And then they keep turning it a little bit. And, just a grueling drive. And, we weren't very good that week, and I knew we weren't very good that week going into it. And that the end result of that game was probably the best thing that could happen to us because we really challenged our kids the next 5 weeks. Typically, I would say that during the playoffs, we kind of taper things back a little bit. We're not as physical during practice. We don't go quite as long as we typically would in a practice. Keep our legs and. We didn't let up, from that opening week against Aurora Christian. We had our foot on the pedal, and we worked our kids hard. They responded well. And, I think it was every Sunday when we'd meet as a coaching staff, then we'd say, keep our foot on the pedal. Don't let up on these guys. Don't let them relax. And like I said, they responded really well.
Yeah, so you talked about the huge win over Aurora Christian in the first round. Then you get the rematch with Forreston. Now, one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast, talking to coaches, is I love talking about, getting into your brain that week, about the game planning, about the strategy. What was your approach going into that rematch? And what did you see? Did you see anything X's and O's wise that you needed to adjust? Or what were you talking about as coaches going into that rematch against Forreston?
Well, really X's and O's. When we play Forreston, there's not going to be a whole lot of secrets. Neither one of us change anything really all year long. You might add a little wrinkle here or there, but that was the game our kids really wanted. We went down, we scouted that game. They played down on a Friday night against Galena, the first round game. And a few of us coaches were down there, and probably 8 or 10 players. And they stood by us. And, at one point in time, Galena was threatening late. And we said, hey, we might get a shot at Galena. And our kids are like, no, we want to play Forreston. So that kind of set the tone right there before we ever played Aurora Christian. And so having been beat up front like they beat us in week 9, and that doesn't happen to us a whole lot, but what they did to us at the offensive defensive line scrimmage week 9 really set the tone for the second round playoff game, week 11. And it was pretty self-motivating all week long, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You go on to you win that one against Forreston. Mari Roby has a great game in that one. But I think, man, Mari Roby really turned heads in the Fulton game the following week. In the quarterfinals, he goes 109 yards and 2 touchdowns on his first 2 carries. Coach, you ever seen anything like that? You've had a lot of good running backs, but the start to that game, just the way he was shot out of a cannon was really impressive.
Yeah, he just, hats off to him because he worked so hard. A lot of it was on his own. He's going to physical therapy. You could see him each week. He'd get a little bit better. I'm trying to think what game it was in the Forreston game. I think he got caught from behind, and that's pretty frustrating for a kid who's about a 4.55 kid in the 40, knowing he knows what he can do and he just couldn't quite do it, So that's pretty frustrating for him. But, just the work ethic he has, and to get to that point, to be able to have 2 carries for 100 and some yards was pretty incredible. And so I wouldn't expect anything less out of him. Let's put it that way, because that's just how he is. And, he's a great representation of our football program because he works hard. He's a good student. He's a class act in the classroom, on the field, off the field, everything. And, I wish we had him for about 10 more years. So.
Yeah, I wish I could watch him play high school football for about 10 more years, man. He did some things that was so much fun to watch. I mean, these highlights were just incredible in every game. So let's jump into the state championship game. You're going up against Carrollton, 3 first half turnovers, which not ideal, but when you needed a spark, here we go again. Mari Roby, 3 touchdowns in the second quarter, in a wild second quarter. Just take me through the emotions of that first half. I mean, at first it was like, well, what's going on here? And I was walking the sideline and, you could sense frustration building amongst you guys. And then, Mari Roby kind of said, no, I got this, and just went to work. It was impressive.
Right. We didn't have a problem moving the ball. We were doing what we wanted to do. We were getting first downs. We were rolling the clock, putting ourselves in good field position. And it seemed like, every time we got into a good position, there was a fumble. We had the interception, a couple of fumbles. At one point in time, probably late first, early second quarter, I felt like we were in control. But every time we kind of gained control, then we'd fumble it. We'd throw the pick. We'd do something. And, I remember saying to our kids 2 different times after we scored, before our kick coverage took the field, hey, we're fine. The kids were frustrated. You sense that too. And I'm like, we're fine. We can't play any worse than we are right now. So if this is the worst we're going to play, and we're still leading in a state championship game, so be it. And I made the comment to several people at halftime and following the game that it wasn't the best game we played all year, but it was good enough at that point in time. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's kind of frustrating. You get into a state championship game, you want to play your A game. There's a lot of people there watching. There's a lot of people watching on TV, online, live streaming it. And so you really don't want to show that performance. But we played well enough to win. At times we played great, and at times we, like I said, putting the ball on the field, on the ground and stuff like that. But again, at the end of the day, it was a state championship game, and it was good enough to win, and we brought home trophies.
Yeah, Coach, let's talk a little bit about, the rest of your offense. Luke Benson, an experienced quarterback who really seemed to be kind of a leader, amongst that huddle, when you guys are on the field offensively. We talked about Ethan Fye and Jake Zeal and Gage Dunker, Brady Isle. There's so many names that could run the ball for you and run it well behind a really talented offensive line. All that being said, all those names being thrown out there, what made this offense stand out to you? What do you remember about this offense from this past year that when you would set up plays, when you would get out on the field and say, wow, this is really, they really got something here?
Well, I thought we were actually able to do a lot of different things, even though it doesn't look like it on film. It doesn't look like it when you're there watching us. Very rarely do we just base block something up front. We're pulling something. We're running down scheme, power scheme, counter trace scheme, wham, a lot of different stuff that we're running that people don't understand or see. And we were able to do a lot of those things just because of the personnel we had. For example, I thought most of the year Mari was our best blocker at running back, and when he wasn't as healthy as he was at the end of the year, he was leading up in there and he was just hammering linebackers, or he was kicking out D ends and things like that. So he was really, really good at not only running the football but also blocking. I think late in the year, Gage Dunker really became that hammer as a lead blocker when Mari got healthy and was able to carry it more. Brody Mann at tight end, he allowed us to do a lot of things that we aren't always able to do, just because he was a great run blocker at the point of attack. He was great at play action pass, able to get out and run routes, and with his length and his great hands, we were able to do a lot of things. We only threw it probably 50 times on the year, but when we did, we were able to accomplish a lot of things that, we set out to do when we do decide to throw it. And Luke was always ready for that. He was a 3-year starter for us. When he was a sophomore, he really didn't have to do a whole lot. You had Sean Ormiston, you had Isaiah Bruce in the backfield. You had a lot of guys you could just hand it off to and let them go. And, so when we threw play action, it was a home run or nothing when Luke was a sophomore. And then, as he matured as a junior and then into this year, he really became more of that leader on the field in the huddle, and which is exactly what we needed him to do.
Yeah, Coach, you referenced Brody Mann on the offensive side of the ball. Tell me about him on defense. Obviously, ended up being an all-state football player this year, so huge credit for him on that. He really, I felt like, led the way in that second half to shut down Carrollton. He had a couple big plays back-to-back, getting to the Carrollton offense in the backfield. How crucial was he for this team? I mean, looking defensively on the side of the ball.
Oh, just incredible. He really surprised us as a junior, how well he played. Again, he got all that experience in that shortened season that, on both sides of the ball. And then this year, we knew he was going to be really good. In the Dupec game, his junior year, first pass of the game by the Hoffman kid, I think it was his first and only interception of the year, and Brody just made a great play on it, and really showed his athleticism the ball was well overthrown most linebackers, and Brody went up and got it, dropped right into the perfect zone. Great run stopper and perimeter run. He's really deceptively fast. And he was really our leader on defense, because it seemed like when something needed to be done, he was the guy that stepped up. And he had the huge sack late in the game against Carrollton. in the second half there. He just made plays all year long. He was able to get off blocks, beat blocks, and make plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. And we've had a lot of good players come through Lee Win, and I don't know if he's the best linebacker we've ever had, but there's nobody that was better than him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like I kind of referenced Luke Benson on offense. It felt like on defense, he was the heartbeat. You know, he was the guy kids were looking at. You know, opponents were looking at him too for the plays he was making. So I always kind of, saw him as kind of that leader on your defense. Coach, overall, it's your 5th state championship team. What characteristics stand out? How do you remember this team? What defines it for you?
I think they just got better. As a group, they were put in a bad situation to begin with, like every other kid in America with the whole COVID thing. Our kids are workout freaks. They're in the weight room and on the track all the time. And that never stopped in that time, in that COVID time. Even though we weren't doing stuff at home, they were all over the place. We had kids going to gyms that weren't even open. We have a deal here in Lena that's similar to like an Anytime Fitness where you can code in, and they were still going into that gym, even though they probably weren't supposed to be. They were working out at guys' houses. I gave weights out and bands out and stuff to kids, and they were doing makeshift weight rooms in their basements and their garages. One kid's got a nice setup in their horse barn, and so the thing is, it's been such a ride here over the last probably 15 years that kids have just, every year it's a new group of kids, but it's the same thing. They just pick up where the last group left off. And this group, they never skipped a beat. And when they knew, the one thing we really had going for us this year is they knew they were going to start a regular season. But at any point in time, I thought, COVID could put an end to this. So, we reminded them of that a lot. And they just responded. They played every day like it was their last day. And I think, it's a group of kids, this group of seniors that has always been really, really tight. There's about 14, maybe 15 of them, something like that. They've always been a great group. They've always been best of friends. They hang out on the field. They hang out off the field. So it's just for them to finish it off like they did. It's kind of a fitting end to that chapter.
Yeah. Coach, you talked about the weightlifting and, how, your kids are weightlifting freaks. And I think that goes back, years in this program. Me and Mitch, on the podcast, love talking about NUIC football because, we say it without any hesitation. It's the best football conference in the state. The level of competition is the best you're going to find anywhere. What separates Lena-Winslow? What has separated your program? You talked about weightlifting, but, back when you started to where you're at now, what do you think has been some key factors to getting you guys to where you're at?
A couple of things, I think. Most of it has not a whole lot to do with me. First of all, Kevin Milder, our defensive coordinator, has been with me since the day I started. He was one of the first guys I hired. Connor Arndt, who's been our sophomore coach for probably, Connor's been coaching here for probably 35 years. He's going to step down this year, but come back as a volunteer, hopefully. Kyle Benson, our offensive coordinator, since the day he moved back to Lena, he's a Lee Win grad. He's been with us. John Mankuski has been a volunteer coach with us for probably 20 years. I don't know that for a fact, but he's volunteered. He volunteered before his son was in school, through his son being in school, and his son's been out of school now for probably going on 10 years here pretty soon. So we've had that camaraderie amongst our coaching staff that has really helped. I think the other thing is we've never been afraid of change. If I go to Kevin, our defensive coordinator, and say, hey, take a look at this. I think, maybe this is something we should look at. I don't necessarily care that we do that, but it's out there. And I think our guys have always been willing to change for the betterment of our program. And we do the same thing in our strength and speed program. Austin Rickles is our head track coach. He's also a volunteer coach for us with the fresh soft and the varsity. He runs all of our speed stuff. And, I just turned that over to him. He took it by the reins. We do it every day, in the off season, during the season, all things like that. So I don't think there's anybody on our staff, and we have a staff of 12 coaches that includes 4 junior high guys. But as soon as the junior high season's over, they come right to us. They're at practice almost every day. They're running a scout team during the playoffs. They're doing something, helping out on the sidelines. And I think it's always, it's what's best for the team in terms of all of those guys as well. And, to me, that's what has kept it the way it is. And I think with the emergence of, when I first took over, Galena was kind of ruling the conference. Stockton was still pretty good. And so we had to really work to try to get to their level. And then it was Dakota. And Coach Lano, built an incredible program there. And we really had to bust our butt, especially in our strength conditioning program, to try to get to their level. And we finally got to that. Forreston kind of did the same thing, coming back at us, as well as Dupec. And, I think you have to be open to change, and you really have to try to keep that chip on your shoulder in order to stay at their level. So I think like you said, being the best small school conference in the state, I think to raise your level at all times and stay on the top is a hard thing to do, but I think it's also the best motivator. I've had this conversation, I think, with Coach Freed from Galena before. The best thing for our conference is for Galena to be good every year. People will say to me, I think Galena is going to be down, or Dakota is going to be down a little bit this year. That's good. I'm like, no, it's not. The best thing, if we could play a 9-game schedule in our 10-team conference that everybody was really equal every year, we're going to do some really good things. But it ups the ante a little bit, so that you got to stay at the top of your game. You got to really work hard to get there and then stay there. But, so like I said, Coach Freed and I've talked about before, the best thing for our conference is for Galena to be good, for Stockton to be good, for Lee-Win to be good. Dakota, you want all of these schools to continue to produce talent. In the long run, you want to beat them, but that's a motivating factor right there.
Well, Coach, you said a lot of this program success doesn't necessarily involve you, but I'll put you on the spot and say, going back to your first season to looking at now, how have you changed as a coach? What do you look back on and say, oh my God, I can't believe I did it this way? Or, what are the things you've changed?
Most people will tell you, I still don't know what I'm doing. And that's fine, because there's times when you question yourself, but I could look back on that first year and go, I had no idea what I was doing. I think you have all these grand ideas and things like that, but as a program, we were in a pretty good place when I took over. John Wallace had been the head coach for a handful of years prior to me taking over, and John left teaching at a young age and wanted to make more money, and kudos to him. But when he took the football program over, it was not in very good shape. I think they had embarked on 3 state winless seasons, an 0-27 streak. And he really did a good job of getting the program back to being fun for the kids. He was getting some kids out. And so really when I took over and Coach Milder and Coach Arndt with me, it was kind of an easy thing to do at the time, because kids were looking to get better. They were looking for a change. At that point in time, Lee-Win was really content with, if we got to the playoffs, great. And so that was a good place to be, because it was a good time to take over, to try to take it to the next level. And it took us a long time to get there. We became competitive, I think, almost immediately. But to get to the point of going, okay, we're going to go to the playoffs and we're going to stay in the playoffs for a little run, took us a while. And now it seems like if we get to the playoffs, or I shouldn't say if, but when we get to the playoffs, you want to compete for a state championship. And I can't explain it. I really don't know how things have changed so much over time. It just has. And it's just the mentality of our program right now of, you not only want to, you want to do things the right way. You want to develop good people. You want to be a good person yourself. But at the end of the day, you also want to kick somebody's butt and have that mentality to do that week in and week out and try to motivate kids during the off season to do that. That's kind of the tough part. And, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah. Coach, kind of a funny story. Looking back now, I remember the year that you guys won your first state championship. And I remember at the time thinking, man, this is really great for the conference to get some new blood in there. A team that hadn't won a state championship, usually you were seeing Galena was in there and Ackman was in there and Stockton, the names you had referenced. And I thought, man, it's great to see Lee Wynn get a state championship. Little did I know what you were had in the works here to win 5, in your time. Did you ever imagine 5 state championships that you're sitting on now?
No. When we won our first one, it seemed like it was so long overdue and, really didn't know how to even go about it. So when we finally got that first one, it's like, okay, we got one. And then we had a down year after that. I guess not really a down year speaking now, I guess, but when we won it in 2013, it was really unexpected because we were kind of injury riddled like we were this year. Our best running back, Tyler Oakley, was down most of the year, not playing well. Got really healthy. And we went on a great run in the playoffs. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought it would probably be an early exit in the playoffs. And we just got a little bit better all the time, kind of like this year. And then in 2017 with Ravion Valentine, Mari's older brother, that team was one that, we beat Forreston twice, and we beat 2 really, really good football teams there. And we beat a great, great Tuscola team in the state championship game to go 14-0. That was one. We had a great team, but we also played some great teams. We earned that one. That was exhaustion right there. 2019, you just kind of had to keep it rolling. We had some great players. We had some great individual talents, and we got better as the year went on up front. And then, this year, we sit there and talk as coaches like, never thought we'd get 1, much less 2. And now we're sitting here with 5, and it's, we're truly blessed. That's for sure.
Well, Coach, you've put your name in the ranks of all-time coaches in the NUIC, but you learned from maybe the all-time coach in the NUIC and John O'Boyle at Stockton. You played for him, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tell me about playing for him. And then, when you became a coach, what'd you take from him? What do you still do maybe that you saw from him as a head coach?
I think you have to develop relationships with kids, which is probably what he did best. But by the same token, you got to be willing to still have the firm hand as well. It's kind of like your own kids. You want to have a great relationship with them, but you're still their dad. You're still their mom. And at the end of the day, you're calling the shots. And you want them to go out and grow up and be great people. And I think Coach O'Boyle thought the same thing about us when we were kids. And so I think in some respect, I do something similar to him. He was a great guy. Yeah.
Well, actually, I read an article that Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICfootball.com put out a couple years ago, an interview with you, and you referenced that you only faced him 1 time as a head coach, and you said you won the game. What do you remember about that game? That had to be pretty emotional for you, or just kind of bizarre, standing across the sideline from the guy that you probably looked up to and obviously played for.
Right. I don't remember a whole lot about the game. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even know what year it was at this point in time. But I remember that I reminded him very often that I was 1-0. And so that was always enjoyable. That was always fun. But he was a great guy. His son Dan graduated with me. He was our quarterback our senior year. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
Well, Coach, speaking of great coaches, in the post-game press conference at the state championship game, do you remember who Mari Roby compared you to?
I don't.
He said you are the Bill Belichick of the NUIC. Now, as you spit out your water, is that a fair coaching comparison, or?
Bill Belichick has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know about football, so that's not a real fair comparison. But I appreciate that from Mari. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, what I'll ask you then is, when you look at college and NFL head coaches, who do you look at as far as the way they lead a team, the way they draw up offense or defense, or what guys stand out to you as guys you try to learn from?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm a huge Belichick fan.
Okay.
A lot of people are not. Over the years, I think he has done a whole lot of stuff with less talent than most teams in the league. Obviously, it helps to have Tom Brady, but year in and year out, they're great defensively. They rank near the top almost every year in the NFL in defense, and he's doing it with no-name guys. So they've done a little bit of everything. In the time that we've had kids at the University of Iowa, I've become a great Coach Ferentz fan. I think he does things the right way. I've been out there numerous times for workouts, for practice. And he's kind of that guy that I was telling you about. I think he truly, genuinely cares about what's going on with the guys in his program, not only during that time, but I think years after graduation as well. I like how he does things. I guess right now they'd be the two guys that I'd say that I really respect and admire, and when you see them on the sideline, you pay attention.
Yep. Well, Coach, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy a little bit of the off season, but I'm sure you guys will be back to work soon.
Yeah, we got kids working out now. Not a whole lot of them, luckily. I think they need time off as well, but most of our kids are 2 and 3 sport athletes. Most of them are 3 sport athletes. I think we've got about 8 high school kids in the weight room right now out of 55, so 55 players. So it's a good time to be around school, and as the spring rolls in here, hopefully in the next month or two, the excitement grows a little bit, and then once kids graduate, this will be a sad year. This group's done a lot of great things for us, but that's a great thing about high school coaching is you're gonna, May 31st rolls around and there's a new group of kids that come in, and new kids developing as leaders, and to me that's what makes coaching high school football so much fun.
Coach, before I let you go, I will ask you I saw a tweet from you a few months back about the importance of multiple sports and maybe not so much hitting the football hard in the spring and really doing a whole lot. Why so important for you as a head coach to emphasize that, multi-sport? I think a lot of coaches say it, but a lot of times it's easier said than done. Why so important for you to get those athletes doing other things? And then, once it's football time, we go back and we focus in and we dial in.
Right. Well, I think it's just like working different jobs in life. I think it makes you multidimensional. I think it makes you a better athlete. I think it keeps you healthy. There's nobody that needs to be in the weight room 5 days a week, and not playing another sport. I think it just makes you a better athlete, a better person overall. I'm not a big fan of, the year-round 7-on-7 stuff, the showcase stuff. I've made that pretty well known on social media as well, and I get a lot of crap for it, but it is what it is. It's my opinion, and I think there's most of your college and NFL coaches at this point in time would tell you the same thing. Go out, make yourself a well-rounded athlete, well-rounded person, and the high school years go by so fast that you're only there once. If you like playing baseball, play baseball. If you like running track or shooting hoops, play those sports, wrestle, do whatever. Kids give us excuses all the time. I want to work. I I want to buy this car, this and that. You're going to do that for the next 40 years. And so be a kid when you can be a kid. I think the other thing that our coaches don't do, we try really hard to not do, is we try not to pull kids in one direction. I remember a few years ago, Kyle Benson tried to talk Sean Ormiston and Isaiah Bruce into not playing AAU basketball. He's our head basketball coach, and he's saying, hey, this summer, they went on their junior year, they went on a long postseason run in basketball, made it the sectional. We played 14 weeks of football, and he's telling, as a head basketball coach, he's telling them to take it easy in the summer and not play AAU basketball. So that's just kind of always been our mentality is play hard when you can play, when you can rest. But at the end of the day, be a kid too, go fishing with your buddies, swim in the pond somewhere, sneak into somebody's pool at night, whatever you do, but be a kid. Those days don't last long enough.
Well, as a father of a young athlete who will probably be in high school sooner than I want to admit, I think it's great. I think that's a great message. And I think it's something we all, I think we all struggle with it. You want to be the best and you want to be competing, but you want to let them be a kid too. So I think that's great. So
exactly.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch, and I'm sure we'll be, we'll be talking soon when football does get back up and rolling. So
that sounds good. Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and you took it pretty easy on me too. So that was good.
All right, sounds good, Coach. We'll see you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.